Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back to RADA and the Future Story 2014. It's great to see so many of you here and so many regular visitors to the Future Story. We've had 4 events here at RADA, and so I know a lot of you know each other already. For those people who don't know, many people here or are at the Future Story for the first time, my name's Sheila Parry. I'm founder of the Blue Ballroom, and with my team at the Blue Ballroom, founder of the Future Story. What brings us together really is this, there's a passion for communications, I think, amongst us as a team of people, a passion for people, and increasingly a passion for technology. The Future Story is a really special event in the Blue Ballroom's calendar. We, as a communications agency, working with some of the world's largest companies and some of the most complex companies, have to stay on our toes when it comes to future trends, current influences, big issues that affect big business. We are at our heart and at our core communicators, but we do that within the business context. And one of the things that we want to do with all our clients and for all our clients is provide quality. The world that we're living in now, the whole concept of the Future Story was built around wanting to create quality out of quantity. We can find out anything we want, almost any time we want. And I'm a bit of a kind of learning junkie. If I go to a new country, I want to know its history. I want to know what's happened to the people that I'm going to meet. Not just today, not just what their internet penetration is, what their mobile usage is, which in the case of Vietnam is pretty phenomenal. I want to know what their history has been and how they have got to where they are. I find it more pertinent to the current. But as everybody knows, as technology is sort of advancing at such a pace, we can be outstripped. History can be outstripped by the current, and so we're always running to catch up. In bringing together this theme, in bringing together these people and the themes of today, I want to tell you about 2 events in the last year that stopped me in my tracks, that stopped me wanting to kind of gather volume and to go a little bit deeper. And they are events about data and story. Our theme today is going to be about creating story in a data-driven world, in a data-driven society. We all hear so much about it all the time. It's complex, it's complicated, it's multifaceted, and our panel will be breaking that up and telling you about how data is from their perspective and in their businesses or their organizations. But 2 events really grabbed my attention, sparked my interest in this. The first one was about a month after our launch of the Future Story last year, and it was an invitation to the Open Data Institute's, one of their business briefings. And at the time, the Open Data Institute was in its first year, and I'm not going to steal their thunder because we do have one of the directors out on the panel, and she's going to tell you a little bit about what the ODI is about. But for me, the ODI seemed to be grasping at one of the real fundamental issues of today, which was how to create a framework for the future, for our digital future, for our future with the World Wide Web. So Tim Berners-Lee spoke about it about a month ago and talked about creating a Magna Carta for the World Wide Web, a framework of decency, of safety, of protection, but at its heart openness. So I hope that you'll be interested in that. I was interested, didn't really know why I'd been invited, to be fair. But I went along, and I think what was interesting is around the table there were about 20 people, and about 12 of them were academics and web scientists, which was a kind of new academic discipline to me. You know, it's probably 100 years old in engineering, but you know, it's a relatively new discipline. And as a communications person, a non-techie, I was a bit nervous, because I thought, gosh, you know, I'm probably the only person who's only got one laptop, with me. But anyway, they were technology, there were web scientists there, researchers, people doing PhDs in all kinds of subjects connected to the web in the future. And then there were a few communications agencies there. They were giants, of course, and there was us. And then there were a few people who were consultants. And the most consultants in business, consultants in management. And what we kind of got out of that, there were a couple of us talking about this, was Dame Wendy Hall's presentation at that business event, where she said, for all this data and for all that we're doing here, we need a story. It's too complicated. What we're doing is seems to be on the too difficult pile of a lot of people who aren't web scientists. And the ODI were calling out really to businesses such as yourselves to engage with them and to understand what they were doing. And so, I decided then that I want to know about this. I've been invited, don't really know why. This is important, don't really know why. And so I spent a bit of time ever since digging around and engaging with the ODI and wanting to bring the ODI and its business to you. So that was the first reason. No pressure, sorry. But, it's a fascinating and important subject. The second event in the last year that has sort of fired my imagination, it really came out of that. I dabbled with the idea of engaging in web science as a master's or as an academic future, sometime in that, non-existent retirement that's going to happen. I thought maybe I should go and study web science. So rather than enroll, I thought I'll just read a little bit more. And my first kind of research took me to Bletchley Park. Now, we did invite Dr. Sue Black, who's a patron of Bletchley Park, here today. And unfortunately, she wasn't able to come. So I'm just going to give you a summary, real synopsis. 80% of you might know, 20% of you won't. But Bletchley Park was the site during the Second World War where mathematicians and engineers came together as code breakers. And they broke the Enigma code. And they worked with the British intelligence, used the output of their work to such an extent that they believe that the Second World War stopped 2 or 3 years earlier than it would have without them. Nobody knew about this because of the Official Secrets Act. I think that anybody involved in computers knows that and a shed load more and have probably done PhDs about it, so apologies for the summary. But the reason that they know about it is because one of the code breakers, one of the people who was responsible for the machine that enabled the code breaking was Alan Turing. And Alan Turing was a mathematician, and he worked on early calculating machines, really, after the war. But he was, in my opinion, one of the geniuses of the 20th century, and somebody that I, aged X, had not known about, read about, heard about, until relatively, in broad terms, in broad media terms, until relatively recently, because the tragedy about Alan Turing is that he was one of the cleverest men in Britain in the 1940s. And anybody who had met him believed that. But he died at the age of 42 in 1954, probably through suicide. And he died having suffered the ignominy of criminal charge for gross indecency because he was homosexual. Don't we riot about that happening now in other countries? But it was happening here. And so having been a secret, an unknown hero, he became a known criminal. And so he died in 1954. It could have been an accident. I'll let you read the volumes that exist about that. But for all his contribution, he'd worked on early computing. He'd created some of the technology that drives our digital age. He had started applying it to cell research, to cancer cell research. he started applying it to society, to how people and organisations or owners of machines work together. He'd written a paper called Can Machines Think? Now, as a bit of a kind of junkie for information, occasionally I do want to go deeper, and so I talked about Alan Turing from the moment I went to Bletchley Park to Christmas, and I didn't get his biography for Christmas, and I was really hacked off. But I got it for my birthday. It's the thinnest biography you'll find of Alan Turing, so I've managed to read it. And you know I love books. And the reason I keep buying books is because actually I got about 20 books for my birthday and Christmas, and it was the content of a Kindle. I didn't get a Kindle. And I was kind of a bit thinking, when is this going to happen, But the thing about books is that you can give them to people, and it's more of a gift than a download, I believe. The other books I had about Vietnam and Istanbul I have given away, because I've done that, but I haven't given this away because I haven't finished with Alan Turing. But I want to tell you about the book. Maybe one or two of you will read it afterwards, but and this won't spoil the plot. I picked up this book, and originally I thought of it just as a little story, a fascinating man with a tragic story. The interesting thing about this book is it's a biography by his mother. I'm a mother. I can't imagine what it would be like writing the biography of my dead son. So it's a linear story. It was about a son. There are so many accounts of his sporting achievements as a child and his academic achievements. He was a runner as well. So, he wasn't just a geek. The book was written in 1959, which was the year I was born. It made no mention of his sexuality. At the end of the book, there's a kind of little postscript, if you like, by his brother. His brother unveiled the fact that Alan Turing loathed his mother. The tragedy of this book it's huge. It's like Shakespeare. And that broke my heart too, because the brother was trying to almost use the reason that Alan had dubious sexuality, but the fact that he loathed his mother and had a weird upbringing. I mean, it's just so much social history in this tiny book. But of course, the most important part of the book is about Alan's work, and his mother had made enormous effort to try to understand it. I mean, she was clearly a middle-class lady of blinkered disposition, and she had tried to understand his maths and his science and his computing. And so she wrote about his work as much as she was able to do, actually not very much about Bletchley Park, because that was still covered by the Official Secrets Act. But why is it important for today? It's important today because I have been able to give this book to people who are web enthusiasts as a human story. I have given this book to Luddites who think that digital is something that has happened in Tech City. And I've been able to say, read this because you will be finding the beginning, the maths and the science and the psychology behind some of the things that are going on in our digital age, and it's not just something weird. If you don't like it, or you don't get it, look at it intellectually, and that might be a route in, and that's been helpful for them. But the thing that really struck me, sorry, I just realised I've squeaked. There are a couple of sort of passages in here that sang out to me, and that was about the media. And so, coming to the future story today, I would like to just read you a little extract from the book, 2 paragraphs. And it covers the moment when Alan Turing has written his paper, Can Machines Think? And he's written about something called the automatic calculating engine, easy to call it ACE, and his thoughts on what he called thinking machines. He published this, and there was kind of a Daily Mail reaction then, as there might be now. And his mother writes, 10 years later, 12 years later, needless to say, the press quickly pounced on this and made a caricature out of him. Indeed, journalists' imaginations seem to have been stimulated by reports of what computing machines might do. Some years later, Alan remarked that the daily papers were many years ahead of him, opening even his eyes in wonder. So far did they outstrip him in their forecasts of what this machine might do. This is wonderful if you live in Guildford, Woking, or Farnham. He considered that one of the best accounts of the future achievements of ACE was to be found in the Surrey Comet. In its issue of the 9th of November 1946, it actually had raised the possibility of this calculating machine one day being able to play chess. As for the ability of ACE to play an average game of chess, Alan told the reporter that was looking far, far into the future, and a more capacious and longer memory would be required by ACE. But talking about the power of judgment about whether a machine could play chess, he said this was a matter for the philosopher rather than the scientist, adding, "It is a question we may be able to settle experimentally in about 100 years' time." So I just thought, this is my cue. This is how I can bring the relevance of the unimaginable to the future story. And I would just bring the challenge, I suppose, to us as communicators as to whether or not we will have the imagination of the press as they had it in 1946. And can we as communicators have the imagination to work out how these thinking machines, what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, what we need to do about it to embrace all that.